the night of the 1st and 2nd of May 1943, RAF Lakenheath, Suffolk, England. 7 MkIII short Stirlings of No. 149 Squadron lined up at the end of the runway. One of the aircraft, BK-696, codenamed L for Leather, was being flown that evening by pilot officer Laurie Blair. His crew was navigator Jake Giacomelli, bomb aimer Alec Davidson, flight engineer Frank Johnson. Nanton Sunderland was the wireless operator, and the 2 air gunners made up the rest of the crew, Ronnie Zambra and Clark Barker. At 21:30 hours, the giant heavy aircraft lumbered down the runway and took off into the darkened night sky. The weather that evening was described as dirty, and it would remain that way until they flew over the Bay of Biscay and the cloud broke enough for them to see the ocean below. Their target was the Girond Estuary near Bordeaux. Their mission was the laying of magnetic sea mines at the mouth of the river, each aircraft carrying 3 1,500-pound magnetic mines. The mission so far had been uneventful. They carried on with their mine laying uninterrupted until the 3rd and final bomb run. Then the local defenders seemed to have woken up to the fact that someone was there, filled the night sky with searchlights and anti-aircraft fire. The Stirlings broke, diving for cloud cover. At this point, Frank Johnson, the flight engineer, informed Blair that the inner starboard engine was running hot and losing pressure. Believing it had been hit, he decided to switch the engine off. The Stirling was now going to return home on 3 engines. As they approached the coast of Brittany, Junkers 88 night fighters were waiting. In the following dogfight, BK-696 was peppered along its fuselage with bullets, one of them narrowly missing Nanton Sunderland and destroying his radio. The air gunners furiously returning fire as Blair twisted and turned and tried to get the aircraft into cloud. They successfully managed to shake off their pursuer, but not before the inner port engine had also been hit and was leaking oil. They were now down to 2 engines, and to make matters worse, there was a massive electrical storm running down the middle of the English Channel. The aircraft, with only 2 fully working engines, was unable to climb above the storm. So Blair gave instructions to his crew to prepare for a bumpy flight. 40 minutes later, they were back over English soil. But the storm was now covering southern England. Low cloud and rain meant that they could see nothing, even though they were nearly down to 1,000 feet. Fuel levels were also critically low. Blair realised they couldn't make it back to Lakenheath. He gave the crew warning that they were going to prepare to bail out. Pushing the 2 remaining engines to full power, Blair slowly edged the Stirling higher and higher. At 8,000 feet, it broke through cloud cover and into open air. At this point, Blair gave the instruction to leave the aircraft. At 5:32 a.m, a full 8 hours after leaving their base at Lakenheath, Blair himself finally left the stricken aircraft, floating down gently to the West Sussex countryside below. Within a few days, the crew will be back at Lakenheath and preparing for another mission. But what happened to L for Leather? It appears that the aircraft continued to fly for about 4 or 5 minutes before the empty fuel tanks starved the engines and they fell silent. The aircraft then going into a death plunge to the ground below. This is Windmill Hill in Hampshire. It's just a couple of miles east of the village of Clanfield. It was here in the morning of the 2nd of May 1943 that BK-696 finally came to rest. One of the biggest aircraft that the RAF used during the Second World War, and this was its final resting place. Unfortunately, there are no footpaths through or round the field, so the best thing to do is to stop on the little lane here and simply peer across the fields to where once that mighty aircraft finally came to rest.